happened. So I've been sidelined a little bit, but the email came at a really good time because I was feeling a bit overwhelmed, as I'm sure we have all been at times, and a bit exasperated by things. And to see the email reminder come up about this session, it put a little bit of fire back in my belly. And I thought, actually, you know what, just because you can't meet people face to face, there's no reason why I can't come and see what you guys have been doing and then see if I can replicate that digitally in my local community. So that's me. That's my whistle stop tour.
Wonderful, wonderful, Barry, and so good to see you again. And if you didn't recognize Barry's accent, it's Glasgow, or at least partly Glasgow. It's certainly Scotland.
Glasgow, yes. And there is a translation service available as well. Online,
and many of us in my early days, I needed that translation service.
That would be difficult, yeah, sorry.
With my friends from Glasgow. And at this point, I love hearing it. And it was so wonderful visiting with you up in Glasgow a few months ago. And so sorry, no one's to blame. Well, I can think of a few people maybe, but for the COVID interrupting our ability to come back and see you again now. But here we are, and in some ways it's easier because we can pitch in and help more easily from here, and are happy to do that. So Barry, wonderful. Who else would like to share? And please, if you can, share your video of yourself as well, so that we feel more like a community. It's, at least if you can. No shame on you if you can't or don't want to for one reason or another. Who would like to share?
I'll share.
Yeah, Frank.
Sure. Yeah, nice to be here. Hi, everybody. I'm from Canada. The last few months, I've had a lot more time on my hands. I stepped out of the financial planning business and focusing more on the life planning side of things. So I'm indulging myself in my dream of freedom. Hello. Yeah. So as I say, I have a lot more time on my hands, indulging myself in my ideals. And when I first got the Golden Civilization about a year and a half ago, and I read it, it really wasn't resonating with me. And then I wrapped up my business and came back to it. And since then, I mean, there's been so much change taking place with the pandemic and so on. And it just makes, it's resonating with me now. And I teach a little bit of yoga here at the studio. So I intend to, we have little talks, and I intend to gradually build some of the concepts in and share them with the group. Yeah, so
beautiful.
It's a nice journey that I'm on right now. I feel really grateful for being able to do this.
It sounds lovely. A life dream come true, and just
spoke up.
Recalling our first encounters, Frank, from a number of years ago, and then we of course sat a meditation retreat together as well. So
been too long.
Wonderful to hear. Wonderful to hear. Yeah, now it will be digital. Great. Who else would like to share? Or would anyone else like to share? Yeah.
I'll share. This is Violetta. I am a financial planner in Northern California. Completed the 2-day and 5-day, actually just very recently, the 5-day EVOC training. I honestly don't know too much about this Golden Civilization. It just sounds intriguing, so I'm here just to learn, to explore.
Great. Well, it's wonderful for me to meet you 2 days ago, and to hear your something about your life and what's meaningful to you. And so I'm really pleased to see you here as well. I think that you've got Laura and I've talked about that you have a kind of wisdom inside of you, Violetta. And we need that right now. It's one of the dreams of a golden civilization, is to bring that wisdom up from inside ourselves into the world. So thank you so much for joining. Would anyone else like to share? No? Okay. Well, you can always come back in. We're going to set this up so there's lots of opportunities for engagement. And again, those of you that don't have your cameras on, we'd love to see you because it helps to build the community if there's any chance that you can do that. And wonderful to see familiar names and faces. So what I'd like to do is frame this. So we're having a series of conversations about golden civilization and how one might bring that conversation about in one's own community, or just we're perfectly happy and love to have people who just want to come and hear and participate in a golden civilization conversation here. So the golden civilization conversation is a term of art, if you will, and involves a process that I'll share with you. A very simple process, but beautiful and elegant and inspiring, which is really the wonderful thing about it. And particularly now in a time of where we're feeling multiple crises. Now here in America, of course, we're feeling the power of the racial conversation and how important it is to have that conversation and to heal wounds that are hundreds of years old and systemic at this point. So, so that's very much up here, but we know that we're also a global community. And so the golden civilization is about that in a way. It's about how do we vision who it is that we want to be as a civilization and make it happen. And my thought was, coming out of a number of you come from the background of the life planning work that I've taught for many years in my professional life, but many of you haven't as well. But there's a frame that we have there that many of you are familiar with that leads individuals into their dream of freedom and into an inspiring dream. And it's so powerful. The process is so powerful that the client can't resist. And usually often they're things that they would have thought they might get to in retirement, or it might be 10 or 15 years. And with this conversation held in a skillful way, when you inspire the person as to what their dream really is, there's a fire that's lit inside of them, and they're compelled to make that dream happen. And it's so powerful. It's now done in at least 30 countries, and by thousands of advisors all over the world. And it's so powerful that it rarely fails. And my thought was, coming out of first the banking crisis and then the political crises here in America, and I spent a lot of time in the UK, as a number of you know, and political crisis there as well. I thought, gosh, and then of course the earth, the worries about the earth and everything. And I thought, why don't we see if we can apply the same methodology of building an inspired vision that is shared by everyone into a torch that, as a civilization, through Zoom and other ways of communicating now, that we create a democracy that's all over the world and just simply says, it's time to make this happen. Let's make it happen. And that's not hierarchical, that comes out of communities and what those communities' concerns are. And so the evoke process, that's this process that we designed over in the financial world, ends up being just as inspiring in communities. And when I say non-hierarchical, that's part of the point, is that it's time, most of us feel, to end the polarized relationships that we feel. And we feel that very powerfully in America. I don't know if Brexit ending means it's less so in the UK, but I feel that more in the US audiences. I was talking with Laura about this yesterday, than in audiences almost any place else in the world. This kind of almost a held back quality of conversing. Because of the not knowing where the other person might be in the conversation. And the golden civilization conversation cuts through all that, which is really quite wonderful. It cuts through it with a vision that's powerful and beautiful. So So Rory, good to see you. So we're going to go through that in a bit of detail and share how it works, the simplicity of it. We're always open to anyone who's tried it. And that's part of the purpose of this, is to encourage people who are trying it to come forward and say, well, this is what happened for me. You know, it was really tough, or gosh, it was amazing seeing the dream happen, or I couldn't get people to commit to that second meeting, that kind of, just to see and try to pitch in and help and collectively be re-inspired again to do this work with our various communities. But as I say, we want everybody, anybody who wants to be part of this group, we want you to come on, and even if you want to just hang out with us and listen and learn. But obviously we're passionate about making it happen all over the world as well. So we'll come to that golden civilization in a moment. I think what I'd like to do first is just remind you of one of the poems that I start the book, A Golden Civilization, with. And I don't know if all of you have does somebody have the book? Here it is. Here it is. So it's called A Golden Civilization and the Map of Mindfulness. And so the map of mindfulness is one of the things that's a centerpiece of the book. And it's a way that I understand virtue coming naturally from each of us into civilization and transforming civilization. And one of the thoughts is that there have been many political movements all over the world. And I think a lot of us would like to see kind of a sustainable endgame for the earth and for democracy and for freedoms. And part of the notion on all of this is that if it doesn't have the poem says, if you want a golden civilization, you must start with what is golden inside of you. And so we start these meetings sometimes with just a minute. If people are uncomfortable, it's just a minute of silence and coming inside. Or if you're very comfortable, or if you've been trained in leading mindfulness, feel free to do 10 or 15 minutes as a beginning if you feel that the community would welcome it. And if you're in another kind of community, a community that has another spiritual practice, by all means, if you're leading that community, by all means, welcome that community's practice of contemplation, of presence, as a way to bring each person in the community in touch with what is deep inside themselves, what's at peace inside themselves. Because we all get into what's like this inside of us. That's easy, but we spend so much of our time. So to ground people in what feels true to them. It could be spiritual, it could be secular. One thing about just a minute of silence is that already we have to call upon patience. And one of the ways that those of you who know my work on meditation, my book on meditation, here, I'll do another pitch here. This is my book on meditation, Transforming Suffering into Wisdom. And you'll see that the subtitle is Mindfulness and the Art of Inner Listening. And the way I think of all of this work is that it's really inner listening. And if the better we are at our inner listening, and the more grounded we are as we enter into a community conversation, the better we're going to be to listen to other people. So when we have that minute of silence, we're accessing already the virtue of patience. We're accessing the virtue of acceptance. We're accessing the virtue perhaps of tranquility, certainly of equanimity. And we're accessing these things. We may access something that is profoundly spiritual. We may access great peace. And one of the things that I think is required in all of this we're certainly accessing selflessness because we're letting go of all of our thoughts about ourselves as we do that. And one of the things that I think that is a virtue that isn't talked about as much, but terribly important at this time in civilization's history, is courage. We see that. I mean, what a surprise that here we are, everything's developed in all these ways, and now we seem to find ourselves more at odds with each other. Courage to speak out, or courage to listen. That's a big one. Courage just to listen. So all of these are accessed by the more development we've done inside ourselves. And I think that starting a golden civilization conversation with anywhere from a minute to 15 minutes of a kind of mindfulness practice helps give that to the community. So I've shared my map of mindfulness, I think, in the last conversation. I might bring it back in the next one. I think in this one we've gone far enough with mindfulness, and we might just start with a few minutes of mindfulness practice, which I'll lead you in just as an example of how I might do this, leading a conversation. So find a posture, and we'll do this for 5, 6, 7 minutes. So find a posture that feels comfortable to you, with your back relatively at ease, your back relatively erect, and your body at ease. And we're going to do it. I'm going to do it as a closed-eyed meditation, mostly. I may peek just to see how you're doing. But I recommend that because it shuts one more sense door. And so it keeps us that much more quiet inside ourselves. So find a posture that feels comfortable. Back erect, body at ease. And at first, just welcome. I mean, another virtue, just welcome the sensations that you feel inside you, in your body. Just really welcoming this being that you are, this body being that you are. And each one of them that arises momentarily, welcome each sensation individually, as you would welcome a dear friend or a child. And as you begin to quiet yourself in that way, when you're ready, bring your attention from the body, move your attention from the whole body to a place where you feel the sensations of the breath. And that could be in a number of places, but most often we feel the breath either at our belly or at our nostrils most easily. So allow yourself to bring your focus more narrowly to that one of those locations. At first, just resting in the rhythm of the breath. Just relaxing into its twofold nature. And welcoming this rhythm of the breath and the individual sensations. Welcoming each sensation as you experience it, feeling it tenderly, kindly. Bringing your focus back to it when your mind wanders, as it often will. But as soon as it wanders, bringing it back as if, again, these sensations were your children or we're dear friends. And in this way, listening inside yourself to who you are, how you manifest. Feeling each sensation, and with each thought that arises, it doesn't matter how alluring the thought is or how annoying the thought is, as soon as you notice that you're thinking, come back. Come back again with kindness, with equanimity, with precision of focus. Alertly and nimbly returning to being right here for whatever arises. And be aware in the last minute or two of the mindfulness exercise, bring some awareness as well to the experience of feelings, of emotions in the body, separate from our thoughts. So just if you notice a sensation and you know it as anxiety or as excitement or as frustration or concern, and touch those feelings as well as sensations with a touch of kindness and interest and acceptance. And so as we begin to come out of this, prepare ourselves for coming out of this into our golden civilization conversation, it's just these qualities of attention and kindness, of presence and acceptance, of patience and courage that we want to bring to each other, to strangers, to people who might have different points of view. And to bring those qualities of virtue from inside ourselves now out into this engagement with each other. So let's come from inner listening to outer listening now and come back. And again, we'd love your pictures if you're willing to share them, because it builds community to know that you're here visually. But if not, we welcome you in any way you choose to engage with us. So we start the Golden Civilization with that, having given some frame. And the reason we give the frame to begin with is because the frame helps settle people down. They know what they're in for the hour and a half or 2 hours. Sometimes it's a 3-hour meeting. Sometimes I've done these things in 20 minutes. And they're very rapid pace then. And people are like, well, how are we going to go forward? How are we going to go forward? It's better to have a longer period of time if you can. But Frank was talking about maybe embedding it or embodying it in the yoga practices that he teaches. And you could do that. You could take a 20-minute segment of that at the end as a way of coming out from yoga and the relaxation of the body and the presence, and now out into the world. And you could do it, and it would be a dynamic ending to that session. So there are different ways that people can do these. And again, we're always open to your experiences. And I'm going to ask in a moment if any of you've done this and would like to share. And if not, I'll just go on with teaching on the various elements of it. But I think the next thing that we do, we would leap pretty quickly into the flip charts. But there's a few frames for the flip charts that I give, and I'll share at least one of them right now. And that frame, I think, is really important. I mean, this, in one way or another, we all feel it, but how to set up the audience. You will know your audience best. Who is the audience that you have there? And what do they feel is most urgent that we come to terms with, and we finish up, and we, deliver in a more healthy way into society. And of course, as we've talked here in America right now, racism is up tremendously, and that may be a major theme. We want to end this, and how are we going to do that? The way that I frame this sometimes is that, we're used to kind of being constantly lost in a political battle and just tweaking things. And we may get involved in a political campaign, or we may not be involved, but just rooting for somebody. And if they lose, we're depressed and we're upset, and we have more blame for who's in there. And if they win, we get excited for a period of time, and then we notice that they're compromising on some of the things we wanted. And it's really what in AA they call a codependent relationship. We're really not there. We're not actively engaging. And so part of my realization was that as long as we're not there and actively engaging, a lot of them end up acting with whoever is actively engaging, and they tend to be people who have money. And so a lot of the campaigns now are really pretty much bought campaigns. So my thought was, let's get engaged, and let's no longer be codependent. But here's the real thing, is that we keep thinking, well, at least we tweaked this bit of a law or legislation. One of the things that I'm passionate about is the environment that, and have been so really all my life. And here we are, it seems as if the environment situation is getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and we really could lose it. And we could have major catastrophes coming out of it in terms of migration and political dysfunctionality and all kinds of things, and really lose species, lose ourselves. And so the urgency to me feels like a no-brainer, and I think most people are feeling it in one context or another. And so my frame of this is, imagine it's 1,000 years out, or 1,000 generations even out, and we've arrived at a golden civilization. So just let go of your thought that we can't make it. We've made it. And now the question is, what does it look like? And call that forth from the audience. And that's a wonderful and inspiring thing. So we start with that, but I also let the audience know that, in fact, you might start there, but at the end, I'm going to bring it back to now. And I'm going to say, let's do it now. What could possibly, if we have an inspired vision across all of civilization, and we've got these ways to communicate with each other, what could hold us back? And we know all the things we think about every day, but let's leave those aside for now. And let's get that inspired vision and get it so strong that, like with a client in a life planning engagement, the client just has to go there. We're compelled to go there. So that's the notion, is that we create something that is so compelling. Nobody wants war. Nobody wants corruption. Nobody wants disenfranchised people. Nobody wants disrespect. People want to get along. They want good communities. They want vitality. So let's make it happen. Let's end the things that are in our way, and let's make it happen. So I give a pitch for the vision, and then open up the slides. And shall I go to the slides, or are there any questions here as to the setup so far? No questions? Okay.
George?
Yes.
My name's Harry Hudson. I have a question on your list of nobody wants. It doesn't appear that way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And it's also a dangerous thing for me to say, because that is a response that's natural to come. But here's my argument for it, Harry, and it comes from experience that I've now, we know that this conversation has been given hundreds of times all over the world, and I've been party to certainly dozens of these conversations all over the world. And when we have a golden civilization circle, I've never had a single person put corruption in that golden civilization. I've never had a single person put war in that golden civilization. I've never had a single person, although we know that there are some out there who've said, you know, whiteness, you know, in that golden civilization. So so the general thing that we find is that, and you'll see it. Have you been on any of these so far? Is this your first one? And where do you come from, Harry?
I'm in Baltimore, Maryland.
Great. And how did you hear about this?
My friend Julian in the UK has got me signed up to do a thing on hope for the Golden Circle in July.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, Harry. Julian's a very good friend of mine as well.
He is something, yeah. He's great.
Lovely, lovely guy. So what we found is that people really do want the same thing. And the truth is that there are some people who don't. And we know one of the ways that the media plays it and the politicians play it is it's us versus them. But really, as you analyze things, you can see that pretty much the people who want war or want corruption are the ones who could benefit hugely from it. And that tends to be people with a great deal of power who see the possibility of more power in one way or another. So the notion here is participative democracy. And that when you really get the community of people together, nobody wants those things. And so that's really where we're coming from. And we can see in our group, you know, and really to some extent, it almost doesn't matter if there are some people out there who do want it. If we gather these groups together and in those groups, those things virtually never come up, which has been our experience so far, then we've got something to build from that.
Well, I'm here to listen and learn, so let me do that.
Great, wonderful, Harry. Thank you, thank you. Anybody else before I go on to the next piece? Yeah. So let's then share the group slide, the slide of 3 things that are that we use. Thanks to Laura and Natalie greatly. If you didn't notice, Laura and Natalie are part of our community at Kinder Institute. And so great thanks to them for helping us out with this. So you'll see here, it's the simplest thing. I mean, this is just amazing. It is the simplest engagement and facilitation. And I honestly think anybody can do it, and you can do it in your backyard. You can do it over your kitchen table. Nowadays with Zoom, you do it with whatever community you have. It's so here it is, that this is basically the conversation. And as I say, you can do it in 20 minutes, but much better to do it in an hour and a half to 3 hours. And we encourage ongoing conversations every 2 to 4 weeks so that you're really moving to build the golden civilization. And you can see the vision that it starts with, and you see that it moves to actions. And what Harry brought up, which is the natural thing that we think about all the time, are the obstacles. So what we've done here is we've balanced between, we've put those obstacles that we are quite obsessed with. I know I'm on news quite a bit, and there's a lot of darkness in there. I'm on there and trying to figure out how can we do this right and all of that. I'm sure many of us are. So the obstacles are a place that we're really taken by, driven by, worried about. And what part of I think the intelligence of this model is we surround those obstacles with on the one hand, light, the light and inspiration of vision, and what Harry calls the hope, because these things are all things that we hope for, long for, believe. It's stuff that we really believe in. And one of the things that the vision circle fills up with is virtues. It just fills up with the stuff that we know inside ourselves is right. And that's why it doesn't matter what community. We've done this in communities of poverty. We've done it in right-wing white male communities. We've done it in inner city. We've done it all over the place. We've done it with new age communities, mindfulness communities, life planning communities. So the vision fills up with many of the same things, mostly the same stuff. And we'll share that in a moment. We'll share an example. And then, so the obstacles, that's where we get stuck, and we have that in the middle. And early on, as we were evolving this, we realized that the inner obstacles are so important. People bring them up right away. Fear and greed come up in almost every single engagement. So we know that's something that people feel we ought to be dealing with somehow. And often they don't know how. And again, that's one of the wonderful things about mindfulness, or about a spiritual practice, or even a secular quieting practice. But then the outer ones we read about in the press all the time. So that we're familiar with. We will often vote when we get to the obstacles. If we have a long session, we'll vote. What do people feel like? Because we're a community, and we want to build that community around what we think, how we think we ought to be moving forward. So we'll vote on what are the top 3 outer obstacles, what are the top 2 or 3 inner obstacles, or what are the top 3 to 5 obstacles in general. And oftentimes we'll just ask people to identify their top 2, and then the top 5 votes become kind of major themes within the community. But not always. Sometimes there's a person, and maybe yours truly, who just says, I just want to meditate, and I think that meditation would really help, because I noticed that I'm kinder. It happens to be my name, but it's Kinder, really. But I noticed that I'm kinder when I do it, and I'm more generous of spirit. And that's really, that's going to be my contribution, but I'm engaged. I want to be here with you all and support you. So there's a range of who comes out of this and how the group splits. And it doesn't split in antagonism. There's no hierarchy. It splits into subgroups of anywhere from 1 to the whole group. You know, what do we want to do? Who wants to do what? And that then comes out in actions. And the actions we split into actions that are kind of general actions. And those can be codependent. What would we like them to do out there? What would we like the world to do? What are the actions that could be taken by politicians or corporations, or by our family, or by community, or by ourselves, that would really make a difference? So we list them, and they're inspiring mostly. They're really wonderful actions to hear. So I've set them up a little bit as codependent, but they're not very codependent at all. They're already, you're moving from the inspirational vision down to the darkness of the obstacles, and then out into how do we solve this? How do we deliver this vision and solve these obstacles? So it becomes inspiring for people and energizing. And that's the nature of this arc. Those of you who know the evoke process in life planning know this process very well, the emotional process that works here. And then the final thing is kind of a subset of actions. And that is, we ask as many people who are willing to as possible within the community we've gathered to share what new commitment they're willing to make that's different from when they came in. And that they will commit to do between now and the next meeting. And that's wonderful. It could be, I'm going to do an act of kindness. It could be, I'm doing an act of kindness every day. It could be, I'm going to do more meditation. It could be, I'm going to start registering people to vote. I'm going to research all of that. It could be, I'm going to lead a golden civilization conversation with my family, or I'm going to try this out in several places, golden civilization conversations. It could be that I'm going to join this group on the environment, or this group on confronting our racial past, racist past. It could be any one of those things could come up as a commitment. And to hear those commitments, it could be, I'm just going to listen. I've got friends who are on the other side and I engage with them all the time and it's very hard for me. I'm going to listen better. I'm going to listen with more kindness, with more grace. Or I'm going to be courageous. I'm going to listen with kindness and empathy and grace, but I'm also going to be courageous in terms of sharing what I think. So there are a variety of things that come out, and they're inspiring because they're, and I think let's take these three things down for now. You've got the basis of them. So we come back to the group picture. So they're inspiring because those commitments at the end, because we are, they're inspiring because we're seeing other people and we can relate to every one of those things. We can relate to joining a group. We can relate to doing a bit of mindfulness. We can relate to trying a golden civilization conversation ourselves. We can relate to doing an extra act of kindness. So they're inspiring to hear. And that's one of the things that keeps the group going. We come back and we share how to go, and not everybody was able to do it all, but that's okay. We're very forgiving. We just want to have the community continue to engage and be engaged itself around how do we make a golden civilization happen. So that's kind of the frame. And there are a number of things I could share with you in terms of that frame to give you more of a picture of it. And I'm going to tell you a couple of the ways that we could go right now. One of them is that we could go to some results that happened 2 times ago with this group. We had the circle was filled with actions, and we've got a history of that. So we can share that and also share the actions and share the whole chart. But I'm also, I think, I see that Mary Zimmerman has just joined us. And I don't know if she'd be willing to share it all. And she didn't hear the whole preamble. So I might just share for a moment, Mary, what I went through. But Mary's delivered a few of these. And so she also has some experience about that. And it might be of value to hear from her. And Rory, I don't know, I heard that you weren't able yet to put the group together or make it happen. Is that correct?
Hi, George. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm actually scheduled to talk to my guy tomorrow morning here in Dublin. So what I did, George, was he agreed, thought it was a fantastic idea. And what I actually did, just to give him a flavor of it, he is a vicar in a church, leads a church. And he just said, how does all this work? So what I did was, maybe I possibly gave him away too many secrets, but the slides that you just went through there, I said, here's how it works. Now, I didn't give him any content within the circles. And I said, here's how we're doing it. And we're going to talk tomorrow. So I'm optimistic, George. I'll get that first one done in the next fortnight.
Whew. I love your energy, Rory, and your optimism. I love it. And
George. I get it from you.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm getting it for you, man. That's let's go together. I'm with you. So love to hear from you if you care, like sharing. And again, when it happens, and we're not forcing this on anybody. You don't have to share anything. But would love to hear, because again, it's inspiring to hear these things.
Yeah, absolutely, George. Yeah, I'm more than happy to share. Absolutely, and I look forward to doing it.
Fantastic. And it may be the very first one that's been done in Dublin. I think it probably is.
Okay. Well, there's a reason. There's a reason. Yeah. Go and do it. Yeah.
Cool, man. All right, great. Wonderful. So we want to hear more about that. And if you're curious about how Rory set that up, I mean, obviously he's got a vicar. He's got a minister who is helping to do this. And that's one of the places that I've given them. I gave Golden Civilization Conversations twice in Ferguson. Ferguson, where the racial incident occurred a number of years ago, which has just elected its first Black mayor, which is very exciting. But to a church there that's considered the most progressive church in Missouri. So and then also at a church up in Vermont that's very progressive. And so that's one community where you can reach out to and are likely to find hope and helpfulness. And again, one of the things we're doing is we're trying to seed it in as many places. So we're looking within any of those communities to see if someone else within that community would set up their own as well. So it's almost like a chain letter. You get a group and then get people setting up their own as well as coming back to the original one. So
George, can I ask just one question? I'd love to hear from Mary and her experiences in running a few events. George, as a financial life planner myself, thankfully I take on more life planning clients over the last number of weeks, and I hope to do more and more in the coming years, of course. And it struck me to ask you, in your own experience, if you work with somebody on a financial life planning, because I know you have that background in the financial world, do you try and encourage particular people to come into the Golden Civilization, or is it a completely separate project as such to life planning?
Well, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, and I think it depends on your comfort level and the comfort level of your community. What's been really wonderful for me, and Laura was part of this early on, have been the number of communities where the head of the firm, and sometimes it's just a one-person shop, but where the head of the firm has thrown a client event and embedded in that client event, even as the lead event, a Golden Civilization conversation. And we've had groups in New York, we've had groups in Hawaii, maybe some of Mary's community was from that as well. Groups certainly in the UK. So one model is just say, we think that you've all experienced how life planning works, that it works by an inspired dream, and now you have that dream and you're executing on it. And we all know that civilization is struggling a bit. And so we've discovered that this model actually works with civilization as well. And so we're hosting it, and would love to welcome you. So one thing is to throw a community event and then see if there's interest in going further. It's a lovely kind of community event. The one that I did in New York, without any question, had people from all over the political map. I think there was more of a leaning toward perhaps the liberal community, certainly moderate community, but there were people in that community who definitely were from a conservative bent. And they all came together and talked together and shared together. And even though there was that difference, there wasn't a hostility that came up. It was more of a sense of, gosh, you've given us hope by having this and by giving us a way of speaking together. So that's one model. If I were back in the old days, like you're saying, you're bringing in people and you're having your new clients come in, and I hadn't done a whole community event, but I was doing the small group, I might very well to say to any client that came into me, who I felt like they might be of interest, might find it of interest, I would certainly say at the end of the meeting, oh, by the way, I'm hosting these things called Golden Civilizations, if you're at all interested, and sharing a little bit about what it is and leaving kind of that open frame as to whether they join or not.
I think so, George. And I think if somebody experiences, let's say a couple experience what life planning can do and how it can impact their lives, a lot of people will say, well, I'd love to do that for others. And the way to do that is through a Golden Civilization.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a community builder, and it's a wonderful thing. I think it's a wonderful thing to do, not just with your clients, but to do in your community. And it basically is bringing you more into a leadership role, where one of the things we've been sorely lacking is leadership. And your leadership is largely one of listening and visioning. and then helping people to move toward action. So I think it only brings good. And I encourage you to try it out. And I'm
Great.
excited
Thanks,
to hear what you have to share. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
great.
is there anything you'd like to ask Mary, and if Mary's willing to share some about her experience having led a few of these and participated perhaps in others? Yeah.
Yeah, just some Mary, some general experiences, I suppose. Funny, George, I had a call there with your good friend Julian there last week in the UK, and it was great. And myself and Laura were talking since, and I was kind of laughing about it. And I was trying to get this minister sit down, get his attention. And Julian said it. He said, "Rory, just do it." He actually said, "Just do it." It was brilliant. It was so simple. And I think many of us here within the group might actually wanted to play out in a particular way or in a perfect manner. Yeah. But it is a case of just get the first one done, the first couple done, and then like anything with practice, we all get better. So any sort of general experience, Mary, would be great.
That's exactly right. And by the way, Julian's name, it's wonderful. Harry mentioned him a minute ago. Barry, I don't know if you've talked with Julian at any point, but I know we've connected you a little bit. And but he's and Mary's had connections with him. So there's about half of us here. He's a wonderful support, and I'm glad you reached out to him, Rory. Yeah,
thanks, George.
Great.
So if I may just beep in here, because I know I'm late to the party, but I'm so inspired just in the few minutes we've had here. And I will say, Rory, as I'm looking now at where we are, because I've had the in-person gatherings, and now that we've completed, I mean, I see Steve and Violetta here from the 5-day workshop, and now that we know that there can be wonderful conversation and depth of conversation on Zoom, I'm excited about these new Zoom conversations, and I want to tread into it. And so, Roy, first of all, I would ask you, because I'm jonesing for an invitation here. I would love an invitation to the group that you're bringing together. I would love to have people in a Zoom conversation. And if I can set an invitation out that, oh, Yogita from India is going to be there, and Julian Powell from England, and Rory from Ireland, and it brings such authority and it brings such expansion to the conversation. I mean, I would love it. So any of you that are doing any of these conversations, if I would just love an invitation, I want you to know that. I hope I would add something, but I think that I'm just to soak up what goes on in those conversations. And as George knows, my first experiences with the Golden Conversation is I flew over to California, I met a friend there, and we met in Irvine. So we had an Irvine conversation and a Laguna Beach conversation, just to see what George was up to. And I would say to you that whatever venue you're in, like I'm hearing the meditation groups, I'm hearing, some of the prayerful groups, all of this stuff, the meditation, the prayer, we're really generating a field. And it's that field that we all want to tap into and we all can tap into. So anytime we can bring any kind of authority, and believe me, Rory, if you attended one of my groups and we're talking about Rory, here's a Rory here from Ireland, and here's what's going on in Ireland, think what that would infuse into a group. Think how many times Rory's name would be given out from people who had been in the circle that time. I mean, it's just it's a wonderful thing that now what we can do is bring people together from all over the world. So I say that first of all, Rory, when you're picking up as to what to do, it's yours, and make it yours. And whoever you want to bring in is great. I tried. My first conversation, I tried to make it very diverse with age, gender, race. And my second one, I made specific to people over the age of 75. So I had a very definite demographic there. And both of them were marvelous. And George, I'm sure you touched on the fact that, and Laura, aren't you doing one of those things with the words that are most commonly used that come up? That the people all over the world, all cultures want the same thing. you know, if we can really keep our eyes on the ball, and that's what we're after at this point in time. You know, we really want to, we all seem to want the same thing. How are we miscommunicating? How are we missing the mark? So how can we bring everybody up and on the same page? So, you know, I could go on and on. I think these conversations are valuable, and I've always said I think conversation, just for the sake of conversation, is important. So anything that you're doing, even if it's a group of 3 or 4, I did one in Austin with the 4 generations of my family over Thanksgiving last year. And that was telling, you know, just what came up. So it's, dip your feet in. And I would be so honored to be invited to any discourse on Zoom that any of you are having. Just want you to know that.
Thank you, Mary.
So beautiful, Mary. I'm just trying to get someone on here. Nellie, I think looks like she's joining, but I don't know why it's been held up, but it's probably an internet problem. So wonderful, Mary. And feel free to, any of you, to ask more questions of Mary or me or Rory, because he's starting to reach out and has begun to form, looking at how to form a group, a community. And we've talked about it can be groups that look as if they might be like this, but we bring them together. Can be whatever group you might find, family, whatever communities you're engaged with are probably the best places to begin. And with Zoom, we can bring people in, as Mary's saying, and what authority, and how exciting to bring someone in from, you know, from Dublin or from Chicago or from, you know, India, or, you know, these are just wonderful possibilities. So anybody else with a question before I might share the next set of slides to stimulate the next conversation or set of conversation?
I've not got a question as such on the process. I think it's fairly it's simple to understand and to implement. The observation really is just it's just wonderful to have conversations about hope. I know for the last 3 or 4 months I've been quite active on social media, but active in the sense that I've been calling out what I see as injustice and extremely poor political decisions, and it's really been getting me down, to be fair. And one of my friends was saying recently, you know, it's great to see you so passionate, but you're not proposing any solutions. So what I like about this is about proposing solutions, or at least galvanizing a consensus. You know what I mean? Because when you look at all of the challenges we face as a species, it can seem an unenviable task to try and solve, but we're not going to solve it if we're not galvanized and working together. And I think, unfortunately, we have political hierarchies that thrive on us being divided and not communicating effectively either. It's in their interests, because when we have our backs turned arguing with each other, we're not holding them to account for their egregious acts. So I think it's a wonderful little way to inspire people to take whichever small action they can to try and make a difference, you know?
Yeah. Barry, I can't wait to see if and when you introduce this, because I couldn't agree more, and I'd be happy to be supportive around it in any way that I can, because I'd love to build the community there in Glasgow, and I know you have a strong community of meditative practice as well, if that's even a possibility there as well. But I think you're absolutely right, and we're all kind of lost in the news media and struggling and being upset and posting our posts and all of that, and it needs the vision, and we need. I mean, community is so wonderful to bring the people together and get inspired from what each person is saying that they're going to do. Wonderful. Thank you, Barry, for your
welcome, George. Thank
contributions. Anybody else before I go to a next set of slides? And want to welcome those of you that have come in a little late, or those of you that haven't said, don't feel shy. Everybody is welcome here to share or not to.
George, I'm just going to be here for about 15 minutes and then I have to go, but I just wanted to, I was hoping one of my students would join you today, but I don't see him here. But
Oh, darn. I did see that he had registered, so it
yeah,
may be that
so
he
maybe
was,
he'll come on.
or it may be that he had a conflict and we will send him a recording
Okay,
to go
good.
forward. Christian, right? Yeah.
Thank
Yeah, wonderful. And you can see, Robert, if you don't mind my saying so, you can see the wonderful Zendo behind Robert. Again, coming out of, we talked early on about the power of bringing this out of a meditative tradition, Robert. So
yeah, we're sort of visioning the possibility now of doing more council circles. We like the process of council. It's not quite visioning in the way that you're doing this. It's more a way of being in authentic community together. And what I'm trying to figure out is how we might do council with people from we're so split and divided now in the country, to get people from rural communities speaking to the people in the city, and to have a council of people sit down that really disagree on their point of view and be able to listen to each other seems to me, I don't know how to do it, but that's sort of what I'm trying to vision, is how we would create council circles with people that are really divided and just listen to each other.
Beautiful, Robert, beautiful. As I said, the Golden Civilization we have brought into quite, different environments and find that it works. I'm wondering, Mary, you've done so much work with circles of various kinds, communication circles, and teaching from them and joining them. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts. I'm not familiar enough with the council circle that Robert's describing, the format of it. But Mary, I'm wondering if you are, and if you have any thoughts that you might share with Robert in that regard.
Well, I just said I love the idea of circle gatherings of any kind, Robert. I'd love to hear more about the council circle. I'm not familiar with that one in particular. But as you can see, it's at no beginning, no end circle. So there's no one at the lead of it. It's usually with a talking stick. Do you have something similar, Robert? Yes. And so it's hard to do that. We'll have to figure that out, Laura, how to do a talking stick as we do these Zoom meetings. But just so it's the respect that if people have something to say, they have the stick and they can say, they can complete what they have to say. As we know, just as we do in Evoke, so often we don't let people complete their story or complete what they want to say. So with the stick, they can have it for as long as they need to bring forth what's emerging for them. So that's the main gist of it. Very similar to everything that we're doing, George. As a matter of fact, I think the very first one I did, we started out in circle, and then we broke out into World Cafe style with 4 people or 5 people to a group. So there are many ways that you can do a circle, and it allows for the voices to be heard. Do you have something, Robert?
Yeah, I'm really curious how you do a circle in Zoom. This is such a disembodied medium for me. I find it exhausting, actually. I love that we can meet and people can be from all over the world, but I get nurtured by in-person interactions, and the council we've always done is, of course, it's not been online, it's been in person, and there's something nourishing about being in a circle with there's more wisdom in the circle than any one person has. And then when people are really speaking authentically and being willing to be vulnerable, it's very powerful. But so I guess I'm curious if there's ways to do circles in this format. If you're doing that, I don't know how to do it on Zoom.
Although I think we could just, isn't that correct, that we could just, so if I'm talking, Laura, you can mute everybody else until, so I think that it would be, I know in the circle, Robert, we have a monitor or a custodian of the circle who makes sure that there's not one person monopolizing a conversation or taking too long. We have bells to stop it. But I think that we could do it, but we would have to frame it ahead of time to let people know this is how we're going to proceed with courtesy for everyone that's here. I'm optimistic. Since that 5-day residential training, I've been really thrilled with the possibility of what can happen. So let's talk sometime. I think that would be fun to figure out. What do you think, Laura? Do we have the means to do all of that?
Anything's possible, Mary. And yeah, what we found with doing a lot of programs, especially intimate programs, where they're all about like people's lives, their aspirations, what's deep within their heart, and giving them the space to share, is that it really comes to setting those ground rules and getting everyone's agreement that, yeah, okay, if I'm participating, I'm all in. And I'm going to listen, and I'm going to respect, and I'm going to value the time that I have to share. And in terms of like the technology of it, there definitely are ways as a moderator or somebody kind of who like me for this session is kind of doing some things behind the scenes to ensure everyone's enjoyment. And I would imagine that some role like that would assist in doing a circle virtually. And I'd be happy to also be part of that conversation so we can figure it out. And I'm sure also other groups have figured it out, and we can tap into what they've discovered.
Well, I appreciate your sharing, but I don't want to take away from George's visioning process, which I think you're all here to do. So.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, this is offline. This is offline for continuing the conversation. I appreciate that, Robert.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jane.
Do you do breakout rooms? I haven't heard anybody mention breakout rooms.
Well, you could, and if it was a large group, we would, and it would be a way of getting people to communicate with each other. I think one of the I've been on groups like this where a circle's been attempted, and Robert talked about it being exhausting, and for me it was exhausting because it was just one person after another. There wasn't a strong structure to what was then coming out in some way, which is what I love about the Golden Civilization conversations, that there's a very clear structure, beginning, middle, and end. But at the same time, I think, that's the reason I was bringing Mary in to see if she had any thought about how she would integrate. And in a way, she did integrate by having the World Cafe kind of intermingling after the council approach. And I think there are various ways of doing breakouts so that if it felt like it would be too much to have everybody contribute to the whole group, you have everybody contribute to a smaller group and then have a summary of those breakouts come forward, Jane. And then
you do get to know a person and have a little bit more time with them and in a large group.
Several people, and we haven't evolved this yet, but my thought is that in a golden civilization, that there could be multiple breakouts depending on the subgroup of interest, the environmental group, the group that's working on racism, the group that's meditative primarily, the group that's working with homeless, the group that's working on COVID masks. And then you have those subgroups, and then they come back and report to the group as a whole. So I think there's endless possibilities, and I'm with Mary in the optimism of it all. And I think and with Robert in terms of, we have to figure out how that it's not exhausting for everybody, and yet how everybody has a voice.
I was going to say, that sounds exhausting, what you just described. Yeah, and how to get it into a less exhausting, smaller group without.
Well, I don't know if were here for the earlier, not this.
Yes, I was.
This time, for the prior one or the one before. The Golden Civilization, you can run very quickly and everybody participates, but they participate on their chat, and they participate in the vision, and then they participate in the action, and then they participate in the obstacles. And if you had it over a couple of hours, you could certainly have breakouts coming from fields of interest. So you would have then small groups getting together, everybody participating with the chat, and then some people speaking to the large group. So I think there's lots of variety in ways that it could occur.
I think it'd be helpful to kind of know ahead of time. Like, I didn't even know how long this call is, so I didn't know how to schedule around it, or I just knew when it started. And you know, and that gets kind of like, oh, is this
Yeah.
the middle or the end, or
Oh, I know one person left at right at 1, and I think he had an appointment. But I thought it was set up as an hour and a half, and that's how I'm running it.
it may have been, and I just missed that. So it's
And
that it gets over complicated, complex online. But
I shared earlier
started.
that we want to, at the beginning of each of these calls, to set up the frame so that that exhaustion factor, people are already, they know what the structure is. They don't have added stress from worrying how long is this segment going on, and when you go. And here we've allowed it to be more chaotic because it's a small group, and everybody's, if you've got questions, it means there's an active engagement on how this process works. And so we're actually building that strength of how to do that, Jane. And Jane, I would leap into whatever golden civilization conversation you can find to join with. And these are among them, to see how those structures evolve, how people are using
Well,
them.
I went to the one in Malibu, which I never got invited to another one after that. So, but it's just harder. How do you get all these people to Malibu again? And so here, at least I can be, in my kitchen.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be reaching out. We're going to be doing these every 3 weeks or so with conversations like this. And
that's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here with my acorns that I picked up in your yard 19 years ago.
Oh, okay. I think
So
Mary was,
it's so wonderful to be back in your community.
Mary might have been there 19 years ago with the acorns at that
Yeah,
meeting.
no, I would have remembered.
Okay. Right. Okay. And Harry, I see that you unmuted yourself. Did you have something you want to contribute here?
Just about the Zoom thing. I think there are ways to do all the things we're kind of worried about, all those obstacles, right? And I also think, though, it would take, to do it really well, it would take a kind of a Zoom expert administrator to run it. You know, put people into small groups, people into, give people enough time to talk, but not too much, all that kind of stuff. Because if you're going to be moderating this, you'd have your mind on the people and the content. If you've got your mind on that plus Zoom, you go crazy.
Right. Yeah, very helpful, Harry. And it's one of the things, I mean, we have on one of our sites, it's called, and you're going to get an email about this after this meeting, but it's called agoldencivilization.com. We have a lot of kind of the basic frames of how to do this. I don't know if we've added much around Zoom, but that's an obvious thing that we certainly should add and will add.
George, we just recently added a PowerPoint with the basic flip charts so that you could present and potentially fill in as you were presenting, like George has, similar to what George is presenting on these calls.
Great, cool. Good. Thank you, Natalie. All right, anybody else, or should I move on to the next set of charts for the next 10 minutes or so before we conclude? And really anything that's urgent for you, if you're thinking that you might want to do one of these and you're curious, do ask. All right, that said, Laura, let's go to the chart that shows all of the write-ins. Do we have one that shows all of the write-ins that people did in that meeting 2 meetings ago? Just so you get a feeling for how that evolved. And this write-in, you'll see it's enormous how much people shared. That was one of those 20-minute things, wasn't it, Laura? That was a, I think
it was a 20-minute meeting. What's odd is that suddenly I'm not able to share that, but I'm going to try to share my screen and then hopefully I can still do this.
Okay, well, I can do it if you can't, Laura.
All right, well, hopefully
Can
you see the vision?
Just the vision. Do you have all three together in one?
Well, not together, but you can certainly see them.
Well, here, okay, then we'll just do it like this. So vision, you see, just briefly glance, you'll see, these are things that come up all over the world. It doesn't matter where you are. These come up, Harry. It's why I'm very optimistic about this process. And Julian, our friend, has his own. He's written his into a torch statement, into a poem, and pretty much has many of these things, if not all of them, incorporated in that one poem for his group in London. Let's go to the next one, which is the obstacles, inner and outer obstacles. And here again, usually, I think I said this last time, I don't try to get everything in it because it can feel overwhelming. I just get people to come up with their top 1 or 2 things. It just happened we had a very large group this time, so we got many things. And then we often vote, as I mentioned, to prioritize. So you can see the inner tend to be fear and greed, and then stuff around belief systems. And the outer tends to have a lot of issues around capital, around money, around corruption, around war and violence and that kind of thing, and dominant power structures. So if we move to the next one, Laura, this is where we end, and it's appropriate we go here because we're near the end. And you see a tremendous number of things, lovely things on the actions, and many of them could be personal commitments. But what's wonderful here, in addition, is on the commitments, we've got a number of these. And you see wonderful things. Clearly there is, if Robert's still here, there are some people here from the country, because we've got plant taro and farmers markets and things like that in the commitment area. So Laura, let's come back, having given everybody just a glimpse of those. Let's come back to the group together. So I love ending with commitments and just seeing if there's anything anyone wants to add, having had an hour, some of you just 20 minutes, but an hour to an hour and a half together. Is there anything you would like to say? Well, I'm willing to commit to this between now and 3 weeks from now when we come up with the next one. So has anything come up that's stirred, that's new for you, that you're ready to say, oh, I'll try this. I'll make this happen. Anybody?
George, I thought it was interesting, and Mary, thanks so much for sharing your experiences. And I had so much focus on the local side here, and that will go well in the next number of weeks and months. But Mary put an idea in my head to say, absolutely, we're on Zoom here. Why not go global? And I have contacts like you guys in the States, UK, the whole lot. So why not? Yeah, and thanks for that, Mary.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, Rory. I mean, there's something beautiful about a local community, but at the same time, there's something extraordinary about bringing that global energy in.
Yeah, and we can do that now, of course, in the middle of this pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Rory.
I have a question, George.
Yeah.
How do we contact each other?
Well, Laura, Natalie, do you want to answer that?
I will be sending out an email at the end of this call, which will have the recording of this video, with some high-level points if you want to skip to certain parts of the video and rewatch. And on that email, I will be including the emails of everyone that was on this call. So, because it is a bit of a community now that we have moving forward. So you'll have all of the email addresses of the people on this call, and you'll be able to reach out to them. And also, too, we are willing to facilitate connections as well.
Yeah.
You can always reach out to us personally.
Yeah, and those of you who haven't spoken, I just want to say we're so glad you're here. And whatever you feel like sharing at any point in this, we'd love to hear. And we respect your silence as well. You're very welcome to be here. And anybody else on commitments? Any commitment?
I'm just going to jump in, and then I'll need to head off as well anyway. I think we're wrapping up. But we were supposed to have a meeting in, I think it was March, wasn't it? And I'd organised a venue until COVID struck. So, and then I got a bit, I suppose, deflated really by the whole thing. Not by this thing, but just by the world. So my commitment is to get 10 people to engage on a Zoom call to introduce the concept so I've got 3 weeks in which to do it. So get 10 people engaged. That's my commitment.
Woo! Cool, very. And we'd be happy to support, and also at the next meeting, we'd be happy to process with you if you care to share. So
that would be great, yeah.
You will support that way. Wonderful, Barry. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So I think this is a great opportunity. Hi, this is Rosario from Oakland, California. And so we met at XY last year.
Yeah.
I went to your 2-day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I have not thought about implementing this information in a group that I have with, it's a small group of professional Latinas. They are younger. They are under, 3 over 40, and most of them are younger than that. And trying to implement and learn about finances. And I think that this is perfect, because we were just talking about just having the power of having a higher income, some savings, and being able to support the causes that we care about. And so we were talking about why wealth is important, and it's bigger than just having a shiny car, or having a home, but it's more about having peace and being able to support other causes that we care. Beautiful. Great. I love it, because I think you should show up at the right time, because I would like to incorporate the vision, and we are already having some commitments about what we do every month or every week. So this is great. I love it. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so glad you came and reconnected, Rosario. And anything we can do to support, and again, as I shared with Rory and Barry, we'd love to, if you manage to actually accomplish one between now and 3 weeks from now, we'd be happy to help you unpack it here if you wanted, but to be an ongoing support for you.
Awesome, yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, thank you. Great to have a voice from Oakland. Robert's leaving. Lovely to see you again, Robert. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's so wonderful to get to know new people from all over the world, and people that are optimistic in these difficult times. It's really wonderful to see you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So anybody else would like to share? Yes.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I thank you for inviting me in the first place. So, yeah, I actually met you in the UK, if you remember, Southwest Falmouth area, or yeah, you've been giving some talk there, and I just talked to my friend about it, and I kind of liked the idea of it, but didn't know much. So
was this down in Cornwall?
Yeah, it was in Cornwall. Yeah.
Yes, I remember you. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
And then I think first he spoke to me, and then we met you some, I think it was Gardens of Eden or something like that.
Yeah.
We met randomly, and then I got the invite, and I'm keen to explore more, because I'm kind of just launched into this, but I love the idea. Is very simple, but it's all there is, right?
Yeah.
Simplicity.
Yeah.
And kind of the inspiring vision to go forward. So yeah, so my commitment for this is to really dive a bit in and talk to other people about it, really.
Fabulous, fabulous. Is it Fran? How do you go? How do you pronounce?
Yeah, sorry. So best just say Franta for short. Franta.
Franza.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, great. Wonderful, Franza. Are you still in the Southwest
So I'm actually back to Czechia for now. But yeah, as the pandemic loosens up, I'm looking to, yeah, go over there again.
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, fantastic. Great. I'm so glad you're here. And we look forward to your report of how it went. Great, great. We are just a minute left, so I think unless someone has a real commitment they want to share, Jane, yeah? You're on mute, Jane.
I have a conversation that has been 20 years in the making that started with you. And I can't do it alone. So I'd like to know who could help me do that here. And it's so perfectly timed and appropriate for this. So maybe you can help me figure out what my next step is.
Well, maybe send us an email, Jane, and give us more flavor to what.
Okay, who do I send that to when you say us?
Probably Laura or Natalie.
Okay.
Or Natalie. Yeah, and they were the ones who sent out the email on this. So.
Got it. Okay.
We'll all get it and be thinking about it.
Great. Thank you. That's all I needed.
All right. Great, great, great. Just in closing, Robert mentioned optimism. I had an incredible moment this week where suddenly I became optimistic about everything. I mean, and it was just like, you know, you always have those moments you go, gosh, you know, what have I been smoking or whatever, you know, what's wrong with me? But it was just so, it had so much light to it and so much power in it. And I realized that, you know, there's a way in which you can understand this crisis that we're in as basically setting up the golden civilization. And I think a lot of us are thinking that way. It's hard for us to get our emotions around that because emotionally we're still kind of trapped in whether it's COVID or racism or the political divide. But you know, the golden civilization itself, the vision, is so optimistic everywhere. And seeing that, you can't help but have some real optimism and, as Harry would say, hope that in fact we're gonna make something happen. So I want to say, keep practicing, keep meditating if you're doing that. Keep your work up with the golden civilization, and we'll come back together again in 3 weeks. You're welcome to join. I've got mindfulness communities occasionally that I'm setting up, and we'll be sending you stuff about that as well. Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for coming. Mary, thank you so much for adding so much. All of you, Barry, Harry, Fonzo, everybody. Sonia, we didn't hear from you this time, but love to hear next time. Rosario, lovely. Lovely to be
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.